I never thought the day would come when the very child I gave up my life to raise, the one I held through every fever, after his mother, my daughter, passed, would look me in the eye and reduce me to nothing more than hired help. I never imagined that love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights could be forgotten so easily, as if they meant nothing at all. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and please tell me and others, what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late? Share it in the comments below. Thanks. It happened at the Riverside Golf Club. White linen tablecloths, crystal glasses that caught the afternoon light, waiters who moved like shadows between tables of people who'd never worried about a grocery bill. I'd worn my best navy dress, the one my grandson used to say made me look fancy like the ladies on TV. I even had my hair styled at the salon downtown. I thought I was being invited as a family. Turns out, I was there as background noise. Caspian, my grandson, 22, polished with that confidence that only comes from never having to check your bank balance, was sitting with 3 other young men from his fraternity. They all looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, pressed shirts, expensive watches, that particular brand of arrogance that money breeds in the young. Then it happened. One of his friends glanced over at me and asked, "Who's the older woman at your table?" Caspian didn't miss a beat. He smiled that careless smile I'd seen him use on professors when he wanted extensions, and said, "Oh, her? That's just my ordinary servant. She's been with the family forever, you know. Like a housekeeper who helped raise me or whatever." They all laughed. Laughed like it was a clever joke, like it wasn't my name he didn't say, like I wasn't the woman who sold my mother's wedding ring to pay for Caspian's first semester textbooks. I didn't say anything. Didn't make a scene. I folded my napkin quietly, stood up, and walked out with every inch of dignity I had left. My heart was pounding in my ears, but my face remained calm as ice, because if I'd opened my mouth, I would have screamed. I drove home in silence, no radio, no tears, just a dull roar inside my chest that made it hard to breathe without choking on my own regret. I'd raised Caspian after his mother, my only daughter Serafina, died in that car accident. Caspian was only 10. I was 68 and tired and grieving, but I didn't hesitate. I gave him everything. Everything. And he called me just for help. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my modest ranch house, something inside me had shifted. Not broken, hardened. Because that moment wasn't just humiliating, it was clarifying. I had let him become someone who could look at me and see nothing. Not love, not gratitude, not even recognition. Just utility, like a credit card that didn't have a spending limit. Until now. I walked into my house, still silent, and stood in front of the wall of family photos. There was one of me holding Caspian on his first day of middle school, his gap-toothed grin making him look younger than his years. Another of us built a treehouse when he was 12, both of us covered in sawdust and laughing. And then, near the bottom, one I almost forgot existed, my daughter Serafina holding newborn Caspian in her arms, looking straight into the lens like she was handing me a promise. Please protect him, love him enough for both of us. And I had. But I didn't raise him to be cruel. I didn't raise him to think money made him better than anyone. I didn't raise him to laugh at the hands that fed him. So I made myself a cup of tea, strong, no sugar, sat down at my kitchen table, and started writing. Not a letter. A list. What I paid for, what I owed, what he owed me, and what I would no longer give. I'm not one for dramatics, but that Sunday afternoon, over prime rib and shame, my grandson made me disappear. And now I plan to return the favor, one step at a time. The silence of my house hit harder than usual when I stepped inside that afternoon. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that makes you notice the tick of the clock, the creak of the floor, the way the refrigerator hums like it's trying to fill the space where a person should be. I set my purse down on the counter and stared at the chipped tile beneath my feet. Same kitchen floor where I'd made Caspian his first grilled cheese after Serafina's funeral. Same counter where he did his high school chemistry homework while I stayed up cutting out flashcards and helping him memorize the periodic table. Same cracked linoleum, same faithful kettle, same me, just older, just more alone than I had ever let myself feel. I walked into the living room and turned on the lamp beside the faded armchair. The soft yellow glow washed over the wall where the family photos hung. God, that wall. Every square inch of it was a history of sacrifice. Serafina's baby shower, Caspian's 8th birthday, graduation from the private high school I couldn't afford but paid for anyway. Prom night, I had taken that picture myself. Caspian in a rented tux that cost more than my monthly social security check, smiling like he'd already won life. He looked handsome, but the boy in the photo wasn't mine anymore. I lowered myself into the armchair and stared straight ahead. No tears, not because I wasn't hurting, but because it was a kind of ache that tears wouldn't solve. It was too old, too deep. You don't cry when the dam breaks, you stand back and watch what gets washed away. Caspian's mother, my Serafina, had been light in human form. Kind, sharp, impossible to replace. And when that drunk driver ran that red light and snatched her from us, I didn't think, I just became what Caspian needed. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I couldn't stand to see what was left of my daughter disappear too. And for a while, Caspian needed me. He was sweet, thoughtful. He'd bring me breakfast on Mother's Day, even if it was soggy cereal and a wilted dandelion from the backyard. He called me Grandmama Cordelia. He used to tell me he wanted to be a teacher, just like you were, so I can help kids too. But that changed the day he turned 16 and his father's new wife bought him a BMW. From there, every year I chipped away at the boy I knew. The car turned into a shopping addiction. The thank yous turned into expectations. The boy who used to cry when I was sick now rolled his eyes when I said no. His father, Lysander, had long since remarried into a tech executive life, holiday wire transfers and the occasional forced smile Christmas card, but no real parenting. The custody papers he'd signed after Serafina's funeral made sure of that. I didn't just raise Caspian, I funded him. His designer clothes, his spring break trips, his rent in that fancy apartment near campus, all came out of my savings, my retirement. Every time he called, it was always, Grandmama Cordelia, I hate to ask. And every time I gave, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought if I gave enough, I could keep Serafina alive. But what was the point in giving someone the world if they forget who handed it to them? The quiet of that evening wasn't peaceful, it was judgmental. Every tick of the clock asked the same question: how long are you going to let him spit on the life you built for him? I stared at the photo of Serafina and Caspian again. Serafina holding him like a gift she'd earned. And I finally admitted it, I was afraid of losing Caspian, so I never taught him how to lose. How to cope. How to earn. How to take no for an answer without making someone feel like dirt for saying it. That wasn't love. That was fear dressed up as devotion. The next morning, I called my old friend Persephone. We'd been friends since our teaching days, 40 years of secrets, arguments, inside jokes, and casseroles delivered during grief. When she picked up, her voice was already suspicious. You never call before noon unless you're dying or furious. I'm not dying, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. So furious then. Good. I'll make coffee. By the time I got to her house, a cozy cottage with wind chimes that never matched, she had already set out blueberry muffins and poured 2 cups of dark roast. She looked at me over the rim of her cup and waited. No small talk, no pretense. I told her everything. The brunch, Caspian's words, the laughter, the way I walked out like a ghost wearing navy blue. Persephone didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Oh no," or "I'm so sorry." She just leaned back in her chair and whispered, "It always starts with money." I blinked at her. "Excuse me." That's how mine started too, she said, sipping her coffee. My nephew took out loans in my name, racked up 20 grand on credit cards he said were for his business. I was still sending him birthday checks when he told people I was a bitter old woman who wouldn't let go of her purse strings. The silence between us felt heavier than the story. She placed her cup down gently. You want to know the worst part? I didn't stop until I heard him call me a burden. Like I was a rock weighing down his future. I swallowed hard. He called me his servant, Persephone. Laughed about it like I wasn't sitting 5 feet away. Persephone reached across the table and gripped my hand. Her nails were chipped, mine too. That's how we'd always known we were real. Then stop funding the lie, she said. She didn't say it cruelly, she said it like a teacher correcting a mistake. Firm, necessary, a little painful. I looked down at our intertwined hands. I've been paying for everything, Persephone. His rent, his credit cards, that trip to Europe he said he saved for, I paid half. I told myself I was giving him a future. Persephone gave me that look, the one that could cut through delusion like a scalpel. You weren't giving him a future, Cordelia. You were buying back your daughter. The words stung because they were true, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. I don't know how to stop, I whispered. You start by saying no, she said. You start by reminding yourself that being needed isn't the same as being loved. I closed my eyes. What if he hates me for it? He already does, Persephone said gently. He just doesn't know it yet. But the second his card gets declined and he doesn't have you to fix it. We sat in silence then. I took a deep breath and said the words I hadn't let myself say out loud. I'm done, Persephone. No more money. No more pretending. Her face softened, not with pity, but with pride. Good, she said. Make sure he knows you meant it. 3 days later, Caspian called me. Not a text, not a casual, hey, an actual call, like I was worth hearing. I knew what it meant before I answered. Caspian never called unless he wanted something he couldn't get himself. Hey, Grandmama Cordelia, he said, his voice carrying that practiced charm he'd perfected over the years. I miss you. I didn't play it. You sound busy. He laughed. So busy. Finals are killing me, and there's this internship opportunity in London for the summer. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I leaned against the kitchen counter and stared at the cracked tile I still hadn't fixed. I see. So, the program fee is due by Friday, he continued, voice feather light. It's only $4,000 now, but then there's housing and flights later. I wouldn't ask, but Mom always said you'd support my education no matter what. There it was. The guilt anchor. Always Mom. Always Serafina. Like I was supposed to keep bleeding because my daughter couldn't. What Caspian didn't know was that I'd already made my decision. I had spent the better part of the evening on the phone with a financial advisor Persephone recommended, Ms. Evangeline, calm and efficient, not even surprised when I told her the grandson I raised was about to find himself removed from every account that mattered. You want to close the joint accounts? She asked. I want to reclaim my dignity, I said. She understood that more than I expected. Now, standing there with the phone to my ear, Caspian chattering on about Big Ben and fish and chips, I didn't interrupt him. I let him believe he still held the power. That sounds like a beautiful opportunity, I said softly. There was a beat of silence. You mean it? You'll cover it? I smiled. I always support your growth, sweetheart. The truth was, I was about to support a lot of young people's growth. But not his. Caspian squealed, actually squealed. Grandmama Cordelia, thank you. You're the best. I seriously don't know what I'd do without you. You'll find out soon enough, I whispered after we hung up. I sat down at my desk and opened my checkbook. I wrote a check, not for Caspian, but for the financial advisor's fee. Then I pulled out the thick manila envelope I had started filling the night before. It held every receipt, transfer, and bill I'd ever paid on Caspian's behalf. I was building a paper trail, not to punish him, but to remind myself of just how much I had given. It was easy to forget when he called me Grandmama Cordelia, in that sing-song voice. Easy to let one smile erase 10 years of entitlement. But the paper didn't lie. I took out another folder, this one labeled Serafina's Legacy Scholarship Fund. I'd already started the process. My advisor would finalize the foundation paperwork by the end of the month. The seed money would come from the savings account Caspian probably thought of as his inheritance. I didn't need it. I needed peace. And I wanted it to mean something again. Because if Caspian was going to call me for help, then it was time I helped someone who deserved it. When I closed the folder, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Caspian thought he'd won again, thought I was still wrapped around his finger like tissue paper. But what he didn't know was that the hand that used to write his checks had already signed him away. The eviction notice came first. He hadn't even called me yet, but I knew because I made the call that morning, signed the withdrawal of lease guarantee and had the final payment reversed. I had the legal standing, the lease was in my name. His apartment, his sanctuary of gaming consoles and takeout containers, was no longer his. 30 days. That's what the paper would say. 30 days to vacate, no extensions, no appeals. The tuition fell apart next. The school's automated system sent him an email, "Your enrollment is now pending due to unpaid tuition. Please contact the administration to arrange a financial resolution." I saw a copy of it. No more funding, no more safety net. And still, he didn't call. Not until he had nothing left to pretend with. It was Thursday evening. The light was soft in the kitchen, the kind that makes everything look warmer than it feels. I was washing the last dish when the phone rang. His name lit up the screen, Caspian. I watched it buzz once, twice, 3 times. The sink dripped. The world held its breath. I didn't move. Didn't reach for the towel. Didn't speak. He was calling because he needed to, not because he understood. And that made all the difference. I let it ring until the screen dimmed. The silence afterward was so loud it almost sang. A minute later, it rang again. Same name, same desperation buried beneath the ringtone. Still, I let it go. Because this wasn't a moment to save him. This was a moment to let the consequences settle in like winter frost. You don't teach someone self-respect by shielding them from every bruise. You let the bruises form. You let the mirror speak. The truth was, he was never going to find humility at the bottom of a trust fund. He'd have to find it with empty hands. I didn't check the voicemail. I didn't care how frantic it was. I already knew the shape of it, shock, panic, maybe even some tears. But no apology. Because boys like Caspian never say sorry until the lights go out, and even then, it's not for what they did. It's for what they lost. I dried my hands on a clean dish towel, folded it once, and placed it neatly beside the sink. Then I went to the living room, sat in my chair, and picked up the latest scholarship application I'd received for the Serafina's Legacy Fund. A 19-year-old girl from the South Side, top of her class, working nights at a diner to help her single mother pay rent. Her letter was handwritten, careful, and hopeful. She called my daughter a hero she'd never met. I smiled for the first time in hours. Because this was what legacy looked like. Not entitled, not loud. Just honest. Across town, I imagined Caspian staring at his phone, waiting for a response that would never come. Maybe his fraternity brothers had stopped covering his tabs. Maybe he realized designer clothes don't hold dignity. Maybe he looked around that cold apartment and, for the first time, felt the air crack without someone there to hold him up. I hoped so. Because I loved him, but I wasn't going to keep him warm by burning myself. The phone rang once more. I picked it up this time, not to answer, but to power it off. Then I sat back, exhaled, and closed my eyes. 2 weeks later, Persephone called with news. Her voice was careful, like she was handling something fragile. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Caspian is working at that new restaurant downtown. Washing dishes." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Because the image already lived in my mind, Caspian in a stained apron, hands red from hot water, scrubbing at the messes left behind by the very people he used to dine with at country clubs. It wasn't poetic justice. It wasn't even satisfying. It was just necessary. For the first time in his life, he was being paid to clean up after others instead of expecting someone else to do it for him. And maybe, just maybe, he was realizing what it felt like to be invisible. A lesson I'd swallowed in silence for years. I didn't reach out. Not to scold, not to comfort, not to offer a ride home. Because part of me knew if I did, he'd fall right back into the script, the wounded prince, the poor little boy whose mean old grandmother cut him off for no reason. But this wasn't punishment. This was his reset. Word traveled quickly in his circle. The whispers spread like smoke, "He's broke. He works in a kitchen." I heard his grandmother cut him off. What stung most wasn't the job, it was the silence. His friends stopped answering. Invitations disappeared. No more fraternity parties, no more weekend trips funded by my bank account. The same people who once clung to him like glitter now scattered the moment the shine faded. And in that way, he and I weren't so different after all. Because I remembered how fast people stop seeing you when you're no longer useful. One afternoon, I took the long way home from the grocery store. I passed the restaurant district just as the dinner rush was starting. That's when I saw him through the kitchen window, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in sudsy water. Head down, no audience. He didn't see me, and I didn't stop. I just looked quietly. The part of me that had raised him wanted to run to him, offer him a ride, a coat, a bowl of soup. But the woman I'd become, the one who learned the difference between love and enabling, knew better. Because if I saved him now, he'd never save himself. So I let the car roll past, windows up, heart steady. And in the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of him scrubbing a pot, the boy with dishpan hands. Not royalty, not elite, not abandoned. Just human. And maybe, finally, teachable. 3 months later, he knocked on my door. Not pounding, not demanding, just 3 soft knocks, like he was asking permission to exist in my space. I opened it to find a young man I almost didn't recognize. Thinner, quieter, wearing clothes that had been washed too many times. His hands were rough now, marked by honest work. "Grandmama Cordelia," he said, and his voice cracked on my name. I didn't invite him in immediately. I stood in the doorway and waited. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words came out like they'd been trapped in his chest for months. "I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for forgetting who you are." I looked at him, really looked. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement had been scrubbed away like grease from a dinner plate. "I know," I said simply. "I've been working," he continued. "Washing dishes, cleaning tables. It's hard work, but it's honest work. And every night when I come home to my studio apartment, the one I pay for myself, I think about you. About everything you did for me. About how I threw it all away because I thought I was better than the woman who raised me." I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he used to do his homework, where I used to help him with his problems. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what it means to work for something. To earn respect instead of demanding it. I poured him a cup of tea, strong, no sugar, the way I'd taught him to drink it when he was small. I never stopped loving you, I said. But I had to stop enabling you. He nodded, tears finally coming. I called you a servant. God, Grandmama Cordelia, I called you a servant when you were the only person who ever really loved me. Yes, I said. You did. We sat in silence for a while, sipping our tea. Finally, he spoke again. Is there any way, any chance, that I could earn your trust back? I looked at him across the table. The boy I'd raised was gone, but the man sitting here, tired, humbled, honest, he was someone I could respect. We'll see, I said. But it starts with you, not me. It starts with you becoming someone worthy of the love you were given. He nodded and finished his tea. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door. Thank you, he said. For loving me enough to let me fall. After he left, I sat in my chair and looked at the wall of photos. The pictures were the same, but the story they told had changed. It wasn't about sacrifice anymore, or enabling, or fear dressed up as love. It was about boundaries. About dignity. About the difference between being needed and being respected. And for the first time in years, I felt like the woman Serafina would have been proud to call her mother. The phone rang. This time, I answered. Hi, Grandmama Cordelia, Caspian said. I was wondering, would you like to have dinner this weekend? My treat. I know a great little place downtown. I smiled. I'd like that very much. Because sometimes, love means saying no until someone learns to say please. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to earn their way back to your heart.